All right, we had a number of requests from last week that we wanted to deal with and answer. I'll restate them. So there were subject questions, to, neither, associations, and for higher levels, more conditionals.
Okay, yeah.
And we're also going to talk about writing skills.
Writing?
Writing skills.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So let's start with the subject questions. As you can see, we put 2 P1s, matching in memory, for subject questions, because subject questions are not difficult per se. Students need, what students need is a clear, simple system to follow and to make it automatic. So here we have question and answer cards. There we go. So question and answer cards. When did Sam wake up? How often does Helen exercise? Who is singing? What is Paul doing? Who woke up at 6 o'clock? Who exercises every morning? As you can see, each question is associated with one answer. When did Sam wake up? He woke up at 6 o'clock. How often does Helen exercise? She exercises every morning. Who is singing? Paul is singing. What is Paul doing? He's singing. Who woke up at 6 o'clock? Sam did. Who exercises every morning? Helen exercises every morning. So you see, this is a simple match in memory card game that you can play with subject and object questions. And each question has a pair.
Yeah.
When did Sam wake up? Who woke up at 6 o'clock? Who is singing? What is Paul doing? How often does Helen exercise? Who exercises every morning? This is the first such exercise, and there's also a matching in memory subject questions. There we go, a second one here. Exactly the same idea. Where is Sally from? What did Veronica break? Who makes pizza every day? What does he do every day? Who's from New York? Who broke Bill's computer? Each question has a pair. Where's Sally from? Who's from New York? What did Veronica break? Who broke Bill's computer? Who makes pizza every day? What does he do every day? Nice?
Yes, that's very nice.
We do that because I highly recommend that as a technique for teaching subject-object questions. You write down the answer. Okay, for example, you write down a sentence like, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, everything okay?
Yes.
You write down a sentence like, Frank makes pizza every day. And you can underline in one color, Frank. And you simply put in the same color, you write who in front, above Frank. So the line of the answer in black, Frank makes pizza every day. I'll underline Frank in green, and I'll write above Frank, who. And that becomes the sentence, the question. Who makes pizza every day? So that's above. Under the answer in black, I'll take another color, for example, blue. And what am I going to underline? I'm going to underline pizza. And in this case, instead of writing something down below the sentence, I'm going to write it below. Instead of writing it below Frank, I'll write it before Frank. I'll write what does, and then there'll be Frank, make, and I'll slash the S in blue color. So it's very clear to the student. They have the sentence phrase, Frank makes pizza every day. Above it in green, they have who makes pizza every day. They have what does Frank make every day.
Okay.
Okay? And so
Yeah.
here, with these matching and memory exercise, matching and memory cards, you can easily practice and automate, actually, in a certain way, these subject questions. I highly recommend, for automating, you play you use these cards to play matching and memory first, but then you can tell the students to take only the questions, for example, in a stack, and play it like a short answer race. And the students need to answer as fast as possible. So, where's Sally from? She's from New York. What did Veronica break? A table. Who makes pizza every day? John does. What does he do every day? He bakes cakes. Who's from New York? John is. Who broke Bill's computer? Janet did. And you can do these question and answer races so that the students automate this difference between the two sets of questions.
Yes.
All right?
Yeah.
You see, we got some very interesting feedback on the instructions. Sometimes the instructions of the exercise are not as detailed or were not detailed enough. So one big thing we did this week, and we're in the process, we're making the instructions much more detailed, step by step. So you see here, it's a typical example of the instructions that will always work now. This activity is made to draw student attention to the patterns of subject questions. So you have an introduction on what the goal of the activity is. Then you'll have a short answer key. And then you'll have procedure and maybe different options to follow. So procedure is the standard way of using matching memory. Put the students in pairs or small groups, give the pairs or small groups the question and answer cards, and tell them that each question has only one answer. In pairs or in small groups, student match the questions and answers, and then you check. That's the classic procedure of match and memory. Then you can increase difficulty with different options. So speed organization, students collect the cards, mix them up, and give the students a time limit, for example, like 30 seconds, then 20 seconds, then 15. Can they match the question and the answers correctly within that time limit? And so you increase the challenge. Option 2, remembering the answers. Students put the questions in one column and the answers next to them in another column. Students turn over the answers. They then quiz one another in this way. Student A points to a question, student B tries to remember the answer. If student B doesn't remember, they flip over the answer and check, and then they switch roles.
Yeah, they're very detailed. Nice.
We're changing the instructions of all activities to be in this manner. Okay?
Yeah, that's great.
I think I saw a chat. Olga. Yeah, I agree. We're doing that at the moment. Do you have any questions, comments on this subject questions technique?
No, everything is clear, I think. The instructions are very detailed.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Now I'll open the chat as well. So we're going to continue. From what I understand, subject questions were an important addition. A lot of teachers asked us. So we're going to continue. Right now you have 2 P1s, and we're going to follow that with more exercises. I wanted to follow up with me too, so do I, all that. So we know that in English we have these set answers when we're agreeing or disagreeing. So I don't know. I go to the gym every day. Absolutely not true. You just answer me too. I don't go to the gym every day. That's me. Me neither. So these are very These are very important for students to master. Why? Because I
it's
like telling my
natural
students
for
that
yeah, sorry.
English is very much sorry?
Because it's natural for native speakers.
Yes, it's natural also because I like telling my students that speaking English is pretty much like a ping pong game.
Ping pong?
Ping pong, you know, table tennis?
Yeah, I know ping pong.
In more classical languages or more I find, for example, in French and Russian, for instance, it's more natural to let someone speak for a while to get to their point in silence and then to chime in. And they're usually long exchanges like that. English, I like this idea of ping pong. I tell my students, in English, we're always looking for validation of what we're saying, basically. That is what makes English a bit fun. That is why dialogues are very quick in exchanges and often very short. You'll have a lot of discussions like that in English. So you'll find the most fluent ones will have a lot of back and forth like this. Me too. Oh yeah, so do I. Oh, I don't. It's a way for the person to encourage me to continue speaking. And in other languages and cultures, that might not be the case. For example, we know for our students in Russian it's not, in French it's not.
Well, sometimes it can be the case. I like to give examples by exaggerating. You know, when you say, I go to the gym, I'm saying that in Russian. Like, I go to the gym every day. I go to the gym every day too. That we don't say like that. Sometimes it works. Sometimes I understand it like that.
It works too as well in Russian sometimes, yes?
No, it works when I explain, when I'm exaggerating and showing that it doesn't work like that in Russian.
I like exaggeration a lot as well. It's a great way to use theater in our classrooms to demonstrate a real life point. Mm-hmm. But so yes, these lessons on me too, so do I, me neither, they might not appear that important when you're preparing for exams, things like that, and students kind of dismiss them a bit. Oh, what's the problem? Actually, they're very important. You'll sound very fluent if you use a lot of these things. And this, we started with just, it's a very good P1. So these are notes in basic practice for phrases that continue a conversation. As you see again, in all our grammar explanations, we always look for the communicational necessity. There are too many grammar explanations in textbooks that are just about describing the function, describing how it looks in a conversation. So telling people that we use me too, so do I, me neither, to agree or disagree with what another person says is a quick description, but it's not good enough. The real reason, the necessity, is to keep a conversation going. If you're never reacting to what the other person says, it becomes monologue, and well, monologues are uncomfortable. The person is going to stop speaking. So even if you have nothing to say, even if you have nothing to put into the conversation, it's a good idea to make little introductions here and there to show that you're listening, to show that you're participating. Whether you agree or not is not important. You'll use different tools like these. And there are things like echo questions and agreeing, disagreeing with, to, neither, etc. So that's the most important.
Antoine, may I ask a question? What echo questions are? I wonder.
Echo questions are
questions
when
explain?
you echo the meaning of the other person.
Echo, okay. Thank you.
It can be things like, an echo is, you don't need to ask the question in whole because what the person was talking about makes it clear.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I can't have next webinar at the weekend, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And you can just simply ask, why not?
Why not?
Well, I'm
going
somewhere. Where to?
Where to?
Who with? Oh,
Oh,
what
who
for?
is? What for?
Okay.
But we shouldn't teach them too much, or they can be too lazy to make the full questions, you know. If they find out how to make these ones, they'll say, okay, then I'll use only 2 words.
Well, so here
I'm just
that's
joking.
no, you're partly joking, partially right as well. That really depends on our goals in the classroom, I would say. That's why I love our short answer races. You definitely need to drill questions so that the questions are just reflexes to the students. And when you start teaching these kind of easy replies that work really well in real life and in conversations, make sure that you make the context clear. Those should not go in writing. Those should, if you're in a more professional or more formal situation, you might want to make the question more clear. Because yes, we don't want to end up with students that are overusing these kind of things. I find the best example is question tags. You can always tell your students, or maybe your students identify, notice it in TV shows, things like that, or in real life. You can replace all question tags with really, with right. Every single question tag can be replaced with right, the word right.
Don't tell it to my students, please.
I'm right, right? Right?
Well, I'm right. Right is better than I'm right. Am not I, you know. So.
I'm right, right? So getting back to the activity. There we go. So this is a P1. And as I said, to continue a conversation, respond to say whether the situation is the same or different for you. So we simply have clear pictures for the students. If it's same, you say so, neither, me too, me neither, etc. If it's different, you just use the auxiliary verb. We don't say auxiliary, the student should notice it, okay? And we have a little table to make it clear. Now, you know that we strongly believe in starting in a place of confidence and slowly building up in difficulty. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Exercise 1 is simply matching the sentences with the responses. Then we're going to fill in the chart with responses that show you're either the same or different. So the first one is just matching. Exercise 2, all of a sudden, they need to come up with their own examples. And on page 3, there you go. All of a sudden, how can you respond? So here we're giving them more freedom. And there's another chart, but more difficult. Clear?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
You could say clear, right?
Right. Very good question tag. We're going to continue, right?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
That's
Yes.
funny.
But I think yes. The moment you tell, it depends on your students. I would recommend, well, you can't lie. You're not going to hide the truth or anything like that. But for example, I particularly remember a group of IT guys. The moment one of them noticed that he could say right for every single thing, that's all he did throughout the entire lesson.
I love when my students find that out, because you should have some brains to find that out. It's not that easy, so it's great.
It's very creative. It's great.
It means that they're going to succeed in life, you know.
Well, hopefully, yes. Fingers crossed. The one thing I have to keep reminding my IT guys is that yes, they're always very creative, very smart at finding and noticing new patterns, things like that. And so they identify this kind of thing. At the same time, they often lack perspective. They often tell me, oh, but your soft skills or your level of formality. We don't need it in our IT sphere, things like that. I often need to remind them, guys, you don't need it today in the current job that you have right now. That does not mean that the IT industry will not change. That does not mean that you might not be working one day with a different kind of people. That does not mean that one day you might not be looking for investors for your IT project, things like that. You need to be ready for this so that real life is easy and not the other way around. Don't tell me that real life is like this, but my life is just this little scenario. So I'm just going to learn for this. It should be the other way around. So
yeah, sure.
Exactly.
But you can't explain it to kids, so you just need to make them engaged with the help of your activities.
Exactly. And I would remind for teaching kids, there's really, I think I've shown you this, but again, you need to subscribe to his channel. This is Chris Biffle. Sorry. If you're teaching young learners, you need to subscribe to Chris Biffle, and you need to watch his first few videos on whole brain teaching, because you'll be amazed at how his classroom management techniques and his methodology for young learners, it answers so many issues on how to control that with kids. You're absolutely right. Kids don't need to be persuaded. They need to be, we need to manage their energy levels. Their energy levels change a lot throughout activities, and we need to manage that to keep them flowing, basically. Highly recommend it.
Okay, thank you.
So let's get back to our...
I would also recommend, if you're talking about this particular thing, one of Tom's webinar when he covers this topic.
So we've added quite a lot of new materials for low level. As you can see here, there's be in present for questions, positive, at the very basic level, okay? If you're in need of specific exercises that cater just to that, they're right here.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you'll see that what we've added here are simple formulas, okay? The subjects,
Yes.
as you can see, are represented in pictures, okay? This is I, this is she, he, it, we, you, the person is pointing, they, and they for things.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah.
And you have that for be in present, positive, negative, and questions, okay? This is A0, A1.
Yeah, thank you. My beginners love this layout because they can always look and remember.
Exactly. It's a very, very telling way to present that to students. They can associate, and you don't need to use, meta language with beginner students to talk about subject, verb, object. We're using brain space that should be devoted to them learning the language first.
It also helps to avoid L1 with beginners, because you can always point.
Agreed. I'm not saying that you should never use L1 in the classroom, but you're absolutely right.
I'm not saying that's, yes, right.
If you need an alternative, you might translate it the first time around, for example, and then you point your students back to their notes instead of translating it 5-6 times for the students over the course of a few lessons. You translate it once at the beginning, the first lesson, and then the students took notes, They have their handouts. They have this, but then you always refer back to the picture, and they should
Yeah,
associate
that's
the
what I'm.
picture to the pronoun. You're
And
absolutely right.
it also helps to make them more independent learners. You know what
It's
I
very
mean?
important. They cannot rely on their teacher
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah.
Makes us feel
So
good,
they're not
but
like kids, and they help me every time. Yes, sorry to interrupt.
no, you're right.
Anton, can I ask you,
And
would you recommend the same site as Chris Biffle, just for adults and for teenagers? Do you know something like that? Just for adult learners?
you want a methodology of
Yeah, something like that, like Chris Biffle's site.
Chris Biffle is
But
classroom management.
okay, maybe
well, it depends. There,
just
if you're interested in methodologies, so so I'm sure you know we have our own channel ourselves. I've done a few videos on methodologies. Check out the. That was a bit loud.
okay.
Shut up, Antoine.
No, there are great presentation supports for some topics. I checked out on Thursday. I checked out the one about the second conditional. That's good if you're talking about teaching adults, because sometimes there are adults who, well, they need it to be crystal clear, and they feel very unconfident. So yeah, it helps a lot.
Coming back to the question, for adults, I can't say I have one thing in particular that I would recommend. The first thing I would recommend reading or watching videos on content-based learning and task-based approach, because those are very, very useful ways of getting adults to learn and think. And it's all about critical thinking as well. It's very interesting. If you're more interested in, so those are methodologies. If you were looking for more direct teaching tips on how to learn, how to teach things, I would, it might sound weird, but I would recommend our site, actually. We have a section, teaching tips.
Okay, thank you.
Where Tom and I, and gradually we expand this, Tom and I shoot videos explaining how to teach certain things. So this is something, anyways, I wanted to show you today, because last week we talked about writing skills, the pyramid of I'm right, linking words, things like that. And this is something that we felt was better done in video. So you see, for example, here, this activity, there's nothing to download, you see? In this video, Tom Wiseman goes over the pyramid of I'm right structure to writing tasks and speaking tasks. Whenever debating or argumenting, it's essential to get our point across efficiently and effectively. This is what we talked about last week, that because of modern technologies, young generations tend to write more and more in a kind of just outpour of brain thoughts. And it's less constructed, it's less structured, which means that the point is less clear. And this pyramid of I'm right is a great way to teach students to structure their thoughts, to brainstorm ideas first, to outline what they want to get to, and to structure their arguments.
I'm sorry for jumping in, but I would also recommend one of your courses if the question is about teaching adults. The question is very huge. It covers lots of things.
Sorry?
I said I would also recommend one of your courses if we're talking about teaching adults, because teaching adults is a very huge thing to cover.
You mean the building fluency, yes?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm starting a new building fluency course in Moscow in January and St. Petersburg in February. Oh, as I told you, by the way, Katerina Stashevskaya from Pro English is joining me. I know some
Yeah.
of you are doing her course,
Yes, I'm doing it now.
Young Learners 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
She's really, really interesting. Highly
Yeah.
recommend. But so coming back to your question, I would recommend these teaching tips. They're direct links to videos. Okay, so you
Okay.
click the
Thank
link,
you very much.
it'll open a
Thank
YouTube
you.
video, and you'll find our teaching tips like that on a lot of various topics.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I just jump in just that I promise it's the last time.
No, it doesn't have to be the last time.
It just is very great also for adults because some of them got used to Soviet style of teaching and they write down all the rules and it's okay for them, but the videos explain how to how to give them real reason, you know, how kids need more like reasons to speak, like necessity. But when you're saying that, when you're teaching adults like that, you can see that something is changing in their, I don't know, in their eyes, because they're, oh, now I got it. So it's yes, it's sometimes very, and sometimes, you know, the way it is presented. I just okay, it's too long. I'll explain later. Sorry, I finished. Just sometimes the textbooks are not the best examples. Even the textbooks I work with adults, it's great one, I love it, but the way they presented the second conditional, for example, was absolutely awful in my opinion. It was not convenient at all, and these tips are much better to explain some things to adults.
Really, the key thing is communication necessity. Finding why the structure still exists in English. If a structure, whether it's functional language, chunks, grammar, it doesn't really matter. If a structure still exists in English today, it's because there's a function for it, or else it would disappear. People would stop using it if it was pointless. So it's all about finding that. And yes, you'll find that in our videos, and you'll find that in our P1s as well. If you, oh, that's target language. So a lot of P1s will have, for example, the presentations, okay? Strategies and exercises. Here you will have the strategies, what to do, okay?
Yes. Thanks
so
a lot.
You can find this here in teaching tips. You'll find videos, or here, P1s, you'll have, if you find strategy P1s, they will have them. You also find, for example, presentation support. This is to help you in your presentation. You see, teaching passive, teaching indirect questions, idioms, eliciting questions, modals of obligation, want, don't want, presentation support. All right?
All right.
Every time there's a YouTube video.
It's great.
Great, clear?
Yeah, of course it's great. It's amazing.
Thank you. So where were we at? We were back, getting back to. There we are. So be in present, there we go. I wanted to point you out to have got. I got a request about that because have got is always, it's a bit specific in English. And so we've got a speed unscramble with all forms of have got for an A2 level student. Again, you see, Tom and I are working right now to make all the instructions much more detailed, much clearer, and for you to have an answer key for every single activity. This speed unscramble, so you see this activity is made to automate word order in English for the students. It encourages attention and effort from the students and is flexibly applicable to a variety of topics. So you have a video example, a video explanation of speed unscramble for a large number of topics. Here's the procedure. Part 1, individually, students unscramble the sentences or questions. They check their answers as a class. if you do this like this, you see part 1, if it's just unscrambling on our own and then checking, this is pretty much like a P1, the same thing. Part 2, put the students into pairs or small groups. Student A folds his or her paper so that only the scrambled sentences questions are visible. A unscrambles the sentences questions orally while his or her partner checks. Students switch roles and follow the same procedure. As a follow-up to this portion of activity, you can also call on students to orally unscramble the numbers to see how well they do.
Yes, I practiced this game.
Yes?
With present simple and present continuous.
Perfect.
Yes.
So basically the students are going to fold their sheet here, right? Along this line in the middle, and they're only going to see the unscrambled part. This is a P2 already, and the great thing is that they started, as it was a P1 at the beginning, they're confident, they know the answer. Finally, part 3, timing. Set a timer to count down. Usually 15-25 seconds is appropriate for speed unscramble. So student A puts his or her paper on the desk so that only the scrambled sentences are visible, just like before. And you start the timer and A unscrambles as many as possible while his partner is checking. You can record the results on the board and then set a goal for, we'll set a challenge basically for next one. You repeat the process a few times and students are basically, again, automating, they're building their reflexes with have got. That's how all speed unscramble activities on our website work.
I see.
Clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite.
Quite?
Quite clear.
Quite clear is what we were going for. There we go. We're going from very low level to very high level.
Okay, yeah. Let's speak about this, yeah.
Mixed conditionals.
Yeah.
So we have 2 new production activities, 2 new speaking activities for mixed conditionals. It's a lot of fun. We'll start with criminal complaints. So this speaking activity gives the students ample opportunity to use mixed conditionals and other forms. The situation is very simple. In each group pair, they're partners in crime. They're now in prison and each thinks the other is the reason why they are where they are. So the crime is what? The students attempted to steal a lot of expensive designer dogs from a pet shop. Each dog is worth $800 on the black market. So you put the students into pairs or small groups and you give each group a stack of complaint cards. Each student takes 2 or 3 cards from the complaint cards and they're going to blame each other. This is loads of fun and you can use the complaint cards. You can just change the crime a little bit. Let's have a look at the complaint cards. Your partner told his or her mom about the plan. Your partner spent $5,000 at a restaurant the night before the crime. Your partner was listening to music during the robbery. Your partner didn't bring meat for the dogs. Your partner never follows the plan, etc., etc. You see that we made cards specifically so that the students can adapt the conditionals. So some cards are clearly in the past. Your partner threw his or her wallet at the policeman. Well, if you hadn't thrown your wallet at the policeman, they wouldn't have a paper trail to find us with. They wouldn't have your driving license, things like that. Here they'll be in third conditional or mixed conditional mode. But we also have cards, your partner never follows the plan. Your partner hates dogs, where they're not stuck with something in the past. If you loved dogs, you wouldn't have shouted at the dogs, you wouldn't have mistreated them, and they wouldn't have started barking and things like that. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I highly recommend this activity. It's loads of fun. Students always really get into it. And you're guaranteed this blame game between two partners in crime that have been caught, they're going to use a lot of conditionals. And very similar, we've got ambitious children. So again, mixed conditionals and actually all forms of conditionals. Situation, student A is a child. He or she has an ambition, one ambition card, that he or she airs in front of his or her parents, student B. It can be student B, student C. Student B and or C is skeptical as to A's ability to accomplish that ambition. B has two reasons to be doubtful. B should bring up those reasons carefully to try to convince A to change his or her behavior and accomplish his or her goals. So the procedure, you put the students into, was there a question?
No.
No? You put students into groups of 2 or 3. Student A is the child, B and or C are the parents. So student A takes an ambition card. Let's have a look at the ambition cards. You want to become an astronaut. You want to live in New York City. You want to get rich. You want to marry a famous person. You want to start a big tech company. You want to sell your own paintings. So these are the ambitions of the kids. One ambition per role play. Parents B and C take 2 doubt cards. Let's have a look at the doubt cards. There we go. Your child hates walking. Your child almost never leaves the house. Your child failed all of his or her math and science classes in school. Your child doesn't like computers. Blah, blah, blah. 2 doubt cards. A announces his or her ambition to his or her parents, and the parents B and C try to delicately convince A to change his or her ways or his or her perspective on reality. It's a great opportunity. The students are going to use second, third, mixed conditionals, loads and loads of different options. Clear?
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I like it.
It's loads of fun. I really enjoy both games. It depends. It can depend on your students.
Yeah.
I would start with the crime. The crime is more the partners in crime activity. Well, we put it at a lower level because the use of the conditionals is more obvious. This blame game. Here, we're not blaming each other, so it is going to be a bit more subtle. I love combining actually this activity with a soft skills activity. So there are a lot of soft skills lessons that you have on our website. Is different communication strategies. And this is a good addition to a communication strategy because that's really the future. That's what our young generations need to master. They need to master these communication strategies, these soft skills, because as we move along more and more to a world with robots and computers that can do everything, all the hard skills, all the necessary things are more and more achieved through robots and computers. We need to be able to put our ideas across in a way that other people listen, other people are open to being persuaded, to being convinced, and how we do that, those are soft skills.
Yeah.
So here, you
Yes,
have a
you are.
clear example. Yes?
Well, Antoine, do you have soft skills materials on your website?
Yes, there are loads of them.
Okay.
So,
Have a look at them.
wait, we'll have a look.
Okay.
In here, in this procedure, you have clear opportunities to get your students to perfect their soft skills because they're going to do one role play, then another role play, then another role play, and they can get better. You can point out why the student, for example, was not could have had more diplomacy in the way they said things. The parent, the same thing. If the parent uses a doubt card in a way of just saying, for example,
Yes.
I'll pick a random one at the end. Bam! Your child is 8. Come on, Antoine. You're only 8 years old. What are you thinking about? What are you already thinking about becoming an astronaut? Just play astronaut with your Lego and your little toys. We'll talk about it later. That's not a good way of convincing me. Your child hates reading. All these things, I combine them with this. If you're interested in soft skills, you take out grammar. You can find them in advanced communication skills. They're also here, soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
You can filter them out in different ways. So if you filter soft skills, what are you going to find? Implying in English. This is very interesting. So implying in English, you start with a P1, for example. This is strategies and exercises. And then you'll have another P1, and then you'll have P3 or production. You'll have speaking activities. Look, implying in English is very important. Let me give you 2 concrete examples that I really like. One of them is, and both of them are work related actually. The first one is me saying something that was not interpreted right. In the office, where we're a multicultural team, we have people from different cultures, Western and Eastern, and Western cultures are very much driven by the English language. We imply a lot. We don't say things that directly. Eastern cultures are more direct. So, for example, I go up to a colleague and I say something like, "I haven't received the report." Well, my colleagues, being from Eastern culture, they don't understand what I imply at all. They're just like, "Well, of course you didn't get it. I haven't sent it." Like, well, what are you talking about, Antoine? Well, actually, what I thought I was being clear. I was directly implying, "Hey, you were supposed to send me a report, and you clearly haven't done it yet because I haven't received it. So please finish the report quickly and send it to me because I'm expecting it." All of that was implied in my casual, "I haven't received the report." Now, it's my job living in an Eastern culture. I work a lot to change that and to be more direct when I'm speaking Russian. But when you're speaking English, this is very important. It's a soft skill that our students need to master. Another example, not long ago, we were at a team get-together. We were at a restaurant and we were just celebrating the anniversary of our school. One Englishman asks a Russian a simple question. You know, we were in those modern restaurants where the cutlery are in little cups in the center of tables. And he simply turns to a Russian and goes, "Are there any forks in that cup?" And the Russian looks at him and goes, "Well, don't you have eyes?" She didn't say that, of course. She wasn't that direct. But it was, again, a clear cultural misunderstanding because the Englishman was implying in English. His goal was clearly, "Just pass me a fork.
Could you give me? Yes.
But he didn't say it. He said it in a way that, and it's very typical. This is very natural, very, very fluent English. Well, of course, he's an Englishman. He implied it. But they misunderstood. We had a good laugh about it afterwards. But these are great lessons to put in your courses. So this is a simple example of a soft skill we have. We call it implying in English. And if you open that, you'll find different P1s. So we always describe these strategies extensively like this. And you'll see that in bold, there's interesting vocabulary for the students. So how can you imply? You can use conditionals. Next page. Perfect tenses are very typical. Minimize through negation. You see there are different strategies, and it's a very interesting text to read with students. And you'll see that in these, Exercise 1 is always a vocabulary exercise. Look, there are several bolded words in the text. From context, what do you think they mean? Vary, test the waters, pointers, things like that. And then you have P1 exercises. So here, for example, implying in English. I love implying in English. It's one of the most basic soft skills that our students need to learn. They're learning English, which means that they're going to encounter this a lot. So exercise 1, they're going to think about what are the implications of the following statements, for example. I've seen better days. What does that imply? I'm going through a rough patch.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the implications. There are different implications. Having one sentence does not mean there's one correct answer. It'll depend a lot on the context of who, where, when, how they say it.
Yes,
But it's a fun discussion. It's an interesting discussion to have. And exercise 2, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to imply the following using a have plus V3 form. So for example, I have to go now. Well, instead of telling you I have to go, I can simply say, this has been an interesting conversation. We've talked about a lot of interesting things. Using present perfect instead of present simple here, I'm implying that we're finishing.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying this is a very interesting conversation, we're talking about very interesting ideas. I leave the door open to the conversation continuing. Instead, I say, it has been a very interesting conversation. We have talked about very interesting solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm implying that it's time to end the conversation. It's very useful in English. It is very widespread, and these are soft skills. They're very useful for our students.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh, Antoine, may I ask you? And can we use an idiom? Idioms are also a sort of implying in English. Yeah? Idioms, when we using idioms. Yeah?
There are a lot of idioms. The problem with idioms is that there's a bit of a never-ending list of idioms and collocations. Check out my Contactia page. Recently, I shared a collection because we made idiom posters basically that you can use in your classroom. So each idiom or collocation, we used an illustration
Okay, thank you.
to illustrate it. There's
Yeah,
a definition, an example. I like using them in speaking clubs, things like that, for students to develop their vocabulary range. Coming back to implying or to soft skills, idioms you can say are kind of a soft skill. Well, not idioms themselves. Idioms are part of the language. A soft skill, using the idioms in certain contexts.
Yeah.
Maybe. You can use speaking activities in that way, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but Antoine, implying soft skills is very important to practice such skills with native speakers, and it is the matter how can you practice them and understand in real life, because without any communication you can't catch the sense of or the meaning of phrases or the way the foreigner tells you the facts or things. So of course, it is the matter real life communication, I think.
So you're absolutely right. There's nothing will beat exposure in our students' experience. Students that are never exposed to real English, if the students only study, well, their only contact with English is within your lessons, then they're the students that are going to probably take the longest time to master English. You're absolutely right. What we try to do with these soft skills activities is we are putting as much control into your hands as a teacher. So the strategies are very detailed. We explain really how you can teach that to your students. And we try to provide you with as many P1s and P3s Soft skills don't have P2s. You can't really automate. You can't build reflexes for soft skills because it's a soft skill. That's kind of the definition.
Mhm.
But you'll find an extensive amount of P1s in different formats. So for example, implying in English, I really like this brainstorm activity where what you're going to do with your students. Oh, well, I'm just magnifying the instructions here. That's kind of pointless.
Okay, so soft skills means that it is the way to conduct the communication. Yes, it is the art of communicating and reaching the goal, maybe, yes, or being polite. I don't know.
Look at this. Look at this. You can you can use this as pretty much your first introduction to soft skills to your students. There are different activities that you can use like that, but I really like this one. We're going to do a brainstorm activity right now, basically different ways to say the same thing. So what your students are going to have to do, and you can do this individually as an entire class group or in little pairs or mini groups, you give them one situation of something they need to say, they want to say, but different interlocutors. So situation one, somebody asks you what you think of the soup, and you want to say, I hate it. Situation one, you're talking to a waiter, waitress, and you're in a bad mood. You're going to say it one way. Situation B, you're talking to your best friend. You're going to say it a different way because your best friend spent a lot of time on that soup and you don't want to offend them. Situation C, you're talking to the queen. And the queen is not your best friend. You don't care that much about the queen's feelings, but she's a very important person and she commands respect. So it's an entirely different situation again. And this will lead your students to realize that, you know what? There are always more than one way of saying something. That's the beauty of communication. The way you're going to say it should not depend on you. It should depend on everything around you. Because what you want to say is clear to you. It's a message that you hold, and if it stays within you, then, well, it's kind of pointless. Your goal is for others to understand the message. So the way you deliver the message should not depend on you, on your interpretation, on what you think is valid, on what you think is important. It should depend on what the context says is important, on what the person, the interlocutor says or thinks is important. That is what matters. And that is pretty much, you've introduced your students to soft skills. Soft skills is exactly that. Paying attention to the world around to deliver your message. Because your message matters to you.
Yeah.
So get the external world to listen to your message. That is what matters.
Yeah.
Situation two, Joe is stupid. That's what you want to say.
Yeah.
That's what you're thinking. You're talking to Joe's mom, situation A.
Okay, his jaw is slow on the uptake. Maybe.
It's an idiom, but it's still very clear that you're saying that Joe is stupid.
But I'm not going to say that he's genius. So.
No, we're not lying. We're not lying.
Yeah.
But we're implying. We're saying, well, Joe does need to do a bit more work to pass this exam. Joe has, unfortunately, Joe has not achieved the same results as the rest of the class. You see, just in this present perfect, he hasn't achieved the same results as the rest of the class. It's way harsher. It's way softer to say that than to tell a parent Joe is stupid. First of all, because Joe is not especially stupid. Joe might be going through a rough patch. There are a lot of reasons why he might be getting
maybe he's lazy
at the moment. You're just implying with facts that something needs to be done.
Okay, thank you.
B, Joe's your boss. You're talking with your coworkers. Again, very different scenario. You're not going to insult your boss like that to coworkers that might repeat it to the boss.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking to your friend, Joe's girlfriend. She loves him. She loves Joe. You kind of want to tell her, look, you could do way better. Joe's dumb. You're going to imply it in, again, a different way.
Okay.
So this kind of activity I like a lot because it's a great way to introduce soft skills to students. This is the brainstorm activity, implying in English. You'll find loads and loads of different soft skills like that just by searching for soft skills in English on our website. There's one testing the waters, dealing with decreasing formality. That's very, very useful. Flowery language, negative questions. Flowery language is how to make your everyday speech more flowery, more beautiful, more interesting.
Eloquent.
Negative questions are very useful. We find
Eloquent speech. Yeah?
Sorry?
To make your speech more eloquent. What do you mean flowery? Yeah.
Flowery, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
to make it more colorful.
Oh. Okay.
If I speak like this and if I use always the same kind of vocabulary, whatever I say, however smart it is, you are probably not going to listen to what I have to say because I'm boring you to hell right now.
Yes.
That has to do with intonation, with soft skills, and flowery languages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Enhance
A good
your
example.
vocabulary. So you see, you have negative questions as well. Those are very useful. We use negative questions are very useful to kind of hint at things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you think today's webinar was kind of pointless?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a joke. It's just a joke. But it actually, instead of asking you the question directly, openly, did you think today's webinar was useful or was pointless? If the question is not negative, I'm leaving you the door open to reply anything that you really think. When we use negative questions, we're actually already hinting at what answer we want to hear. And you'll see that in real life, there are a lot of people who use that. Bosses, managers are very good at putting thoughts in the heads of their team using negative questions, for example. Salespeople are also very good at that.
Yes.
Look, all these are different kinds of soft skills, and you'll find them here. And anytime you see something that you like, remember what I really love about our website. We're at the moment we're working on improving it. That's why all your feedback is really, really important. But what I love about our website is that we wanted to make it as flexible and as useful, as flexible as possible to teachers, because we are teachers ourselves. We understand that for lesson planning, we can't spend our time for hours and hours looking for things. So all these are tags. I want to repeat this at every webinar because it's really useful. If you see something that you like, oh, passive aggression. I want to see everything that the website has for passive aggression. All I need to do is click on it. Okay?
Okay.
You click on something and the tag adds itself to your search. You want to limit it to certain, you see, some activities are so flexible that they are useful for loads of different levels. But right now, I'm focused on B1, B2, okay? I only need B1, B2. Thanks, Antoine. Okay, that's better. Okay, yes, but only for adults. Boom. Every time I click, it filters more and more, okay?
Yes, it's a perfect structure, I should say. It's very useful and very useful, very easy to use.
That's what I find. If you have any feedback on this, please do email me. No worries. Don't hesitate, because I really like it, this tag system.
Yeah.
And I can untag, same thing. Well, actually, I'm not so fussed up about just adults. I want activities that will work with teens too. Boom. I unclick. I click on adults a second time and they disappear from the search. Any questions or comments on everything we've done today?
I have no questions. Everything was great.
As I said, what I also wanted to point out was advanced communication skills. So I'm just quickly filtering out by the last ones we've created.
Mhm.
Check out these two things for writing skills, especially if you're preparing students for YIGE this year, because they
Mhm.
need this for their writing tasks. So this is really a video on how to use the pyramid of I'm right, and then how to teach linking words.
Yeah, linking words. They have problems with linking words. Many people, many students have.
I agree. So we've outlined that in this video, okay?
Yeah.
And more activities will follow. But in the meantime, for all this debating, argumenting, linking words, things like that, remember last week I showed you, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, abstract debates.
Yeah,
And
last week. It was last
universe,
week. Abstract
exactly.
debates.
Alternate universe debates.
Yeah, yeah.
Very useful to get
Yes.
students to actually start debating, argumenting, focusing on the structure, the actual argumentation, not so much their ideas and whether they're right or wrong. Because when we take two real life oriented debates in class, the students emotionally attach themselves to their arguments, and that can sometimes be a problem. We want them to focus on the argumentation technique. All right, if that's it for questions and comments, I'll leave you to it for this week.
Okay, thank you.
As a reminder, next week, I'm going to try to target our webinar on a weekday. Perfect reason, because next week I'm going to a conference. I'm speaking at a conference. I won't be available Saturday, Sunday. And the week after that, I'll be back. All right?
Okay, yeah.
Please be back.
We are looking forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you played Angry Neighbors. Perfect. Sorry, I was just responding in the chat. Do you know Angry Neighbors?
Yes.
Neighbors?
I think yes. I presented it last week, didn't I? Yes.
Maybe.
Right?
I don't remember. Maybe.
You don't remember?
Yes, whether I found it myself or
No, angry neighbors. They were last week. Maybe the week before.
It's very simple. Angry Neighbors. So it's a very good production for present simple, present continuous at low levels. Student A and B are neighbors, and student A, the quiet neighbor, is trying to do something at home, but student B, the loud neighbor, is making a lot of noise. So all you need to do is you take a quiet neighbor card and a loud neighbor card, and the students have a quick conversation like that. You're trying to read, but your neighbor is very loud. Talk to him or her. You're celebrating your daughter's birthday. The theme is farm. Your neighbor wants to talk to you. Olga, this is the activity you meant, right?
yes.
Perfect. Yes, it's great fun, and it's
Really. Antoine.
all right. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll send you the invitations for next week's webinar shortly.
Okay.
In the meantime, enjoy the weekend.
Okay, thank you. The same. Enjoy your weekend,
Thank you
Antoine.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And be back. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone.